So
I
let's
think
go back to when you guys first decided to start the business. And obviously, you had to come up with a price point, whether that be before you got your first client or when you did get your first client. So, when did you decide on the pricing for the first time? And what did that conversation look like? And what would you have done differently?
I think we used what we had learned in our training
Well, we did
a
a
little
little
bit.
bit, but it was our
Hmm.
first job, and the realtor that we were working with knew it was our first job. And so there was definitely like negotiating in there.
Hmm.
We allowed that, which
We should
would
not.
never do again. Like, we didn't make any money on our first job. I mean, we lost money on
Yeah,
our
Of
first
course.
job, and we had no idea, but we were just like, okay, it's our first job. And like, now we have pictures and like,
which
so
is something to be said for that because you
yes.
have to
Yeah.
start somewhere building your portfolio. But I think right from the beginning, if you are doing this and you've gone through your schooling and your classing, you are trained to do this, you are a professional, you need to charge your worth. And if
Hmm.
people aren't willing to pay that, they're not the right client for you. And that was a really hard thing to learn when you're starting out.
Mhm.
And to learn what your worth is. Let's be real.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you need to look at what houses are priced at in your market. What size are they? How much inventory do you have to put in there? You need to
Mhm.
know your overhead numbers, which is something as non-business people seemed really abstract to us in the
Scary.
beginning.
Yeah.
And so that was really
Yeah.
hard for us to use that to figure out pricing because we were like, I don't know.
It's so much easier now to like know our numbers. Like, we know our overhead, like we know what our warehouse costs a month. We know what we spend on.
We know how much we have to pay for our movers. We know our insurance. We know our utilities, all those things, how much money we set aside to cover new inventory, like to pay ourselves. You need to pay yourselves.
Yes, you need to pay yourselves. So, somebody's wondering that why you felt like you still struggled with the pricing aspect of it, even after you took training.
So I think training it's
Broad.
broad because it's
Mhm.
for everybody who lives anywhere.
Yes.
You have to know the market where
Where
you
you
live.
are.
And that's very different. Like, we'll talk with some of our colleagues in different parts, and we'll have conversations about like pricing, and it can vary based on the market that you're in. And I think you
Hmm.
also need to know, are you a high volume staging company or are you more boutique? Like, we are more boutique and we want to stay on the smaller side. So we have to figure out, what do we need to charge to make the amount that we need to
Hmm.
make? Where,
Yep.
high volume, they might be doing like 3 or 4 jobs a day. Their pricing is
Is
going to
gonna
look
be
different than
than ours.
ours.
100%. Yeah. You have to think about your model of business. If you're renting inventory, if you own your inventory, if you own your box truck, if you're working with movers. And so a training provider, of course, can't cover all of those scenarios. They're going to
Right.
teach you about those scenarios, of course. But to say that they're going to be able to give you a formula that's going to work in every model for every business would be unrealistic. And I think that could be said for any business owner and not just in staging. You have to know your numbers, you have to know your market and what it will bear, and you have to know what you want to make and what your goals are for your business and price accordingly. And I know
And really,
that's a
like
struggle, but
how you do your stage and what do you bring to that? Like
mhm,
we know we don't want to be high volume. We'd rather do fewer jobs that cost more. And we
exactly.
curate every single stage and how much time do you put into it? And you have to know all those things for what you're going to charge for a job.
And we're much more confident with our pricing and knowing what we need to charge, but we're still growing too. And so
Hmm.
we'll get to the point where, oh my gosh, we're like running out of inventory, but we're getting, job inquiries. And so then it's, do we take this job and price it accordingly and figure out if we're going to grow, or do we say no? Like, I think, like, you're never going to get to the point, I don't think, where you're like, yep, I know pricing all the time. And it's because it's
Hmm.
never going to stay. Every year,
No,
every few months, like,
The
you're
market
evaluating
changes
and the
and
market changes. And
our clients
that's,
have evolved.
yep.
Price point of houses have evolved that we're staging from what we started in. And so you're always growing and learning, I think, in this job.
How often are you ladies looking at your pricing to see if you're where you want to be with your profit?
all the
All the
time.
time. Almost every job, it feels like. I mean,
I love that. I love that. That's awesome. And that's how it should be done, because otherwise you could, 3 months into it, be looking and being like, oh my gosh, I didn't make anything. I've been working for free this whole time, or I've been working for minimum wage. And we don't want you to get into business to work for minimum wage. We don't. We want everybody to be profitable. And on that note, like when somebody is new to the industry and they are undervaluing themselves and undercharging, what kind of an impact does that have on your market as a stager?
I think it has a negative impact for every stager in your market if you are undercharging, because you are undervaluing the value of staging for every stager in that market. And so we do believe that it's best for everyone in a market if you're always raising the bar, you're elevating the staging, you're getting the price point to where it needs to be in that market.
And I think, as a creative, you want to win that job on what you bring to the table and what your staging looks like, not because you're the cheapest stager. Like, you don't want to win because
you're the cheapest. You want to win because you have the most value.
Yeah, let's not compete on price. Let's compete on value, like Shauna Lynn always says.